Hello and welcome back to The Independent Pianist. I'm your host, Cole Anderson. This video is part 4 of 5 in my series on Ravel's set of pieces called Miroirs, or Mirrors. In my opinion, this set is one of the great masterpieces written in the first decade of the 20th century. And although it's certainly not required that you play all these pieces together, I found in performance that they are a very effective set when played complete. La Vallée des Cloches, the Valley of the Bells, is the final piece in this set, and it's a very powerful and effective ending. We usually take it for granted that most times a big piece of music is going to end in a blaze of glory, but I've oftentimes found that the most effective pieces in performance are actually the ones that end softly. Those are oftentimes the pieces that I really feel I make a connection to the audience with. So if you think about things like Beethoven's Sonata Opus 111 or the Diabelli Variations, or something like Liszt's Sonata in B minor, those are incredibly satisfying pieces which, instead of leaving us in a state of shock with the brilliance of their endings, leave us in a state of quiet contemplation and rarefied meditation. So that's how it is with this piece too. Ravel takes us into a world of magic and understatement, and the sounds that he uses are very clearly drawn from the Javanese gamelan, as well as his own imagination. This piece was also supposedly inspired by the sounds of church bells heard over a great distance in the French countryside, but the sounds that Ravel creates take us farther into a world of imagination, and I think each person who hears this piece will invent their own Valley of the Bells that will uniquely fit their impressions of this music. Ravel dedicated each piece in Miroir to another one of his friends from the group Les Epaches. So this was Maurice Delage, and Maurice Delage was a very important force in the gradual integration of ethnomusicological research into composition in the early part of the 20th century. Delage in particular was fascinated by the Far East, and of course he had this in common with several of his contemporaries, including Debussy and Ravel. It's certainly no accident that Ravel saved the most exotic sounding piece from this set to dedicate to Delage. Delage unfortunately has been mostly forgotten, although his music is very striking. He wasn't very prolific or very rapid as a composer. Composition came rather difficult for him, but he was very influential in his time, and he even pioneered some extended techniques like piano preparations, which were later used to such great effect by composers like John Cage. So Ravel here is really showing his awareness of the Javanese gamelan, as I mentioned, and it's not usually well known that Ravel was at the same World Exposition in Paris that Debussy was at when he saw the Javanese gamelan. Ravel was there. I think he was a young boy at the time, 14 or 15, but he was also captivated by the gamelan, and it had a very lasting effect on his music as well. Interestingly, in this piece, Ravel gets much closer to the actual sound of the gamelan, an almost precise sonic realization of it as compared to any of Debussy's works. Debussy rather took the idea of the gamelan and the layered sound that characterized it and went his own way with it. But Ravel instead integrated a kind of picture of the gamelan into his own style and then added things to it. So Ravel uses an arch structure for this piece. Basically, it's an A, B, C, B, A form. And in the first A section, he starts out with a much more distant and clearly gamelan-like sound. So there are 5 separate lines which stand out one from the other, and these lines are all intentionally percussive in quality. They have a very non-melodic, non-Western feel to them. Each layer is a small rhythmic and or melodic cell which is then combined with the others in various interesting ways to create a very vivid impression of a gamelan ensemble. Then in the B section, the texture thins out a little bit. The upper line becomes a little bit more personal, a little bit more melodic, a little bit more Western perhaps. Then finally in the C section of the piece, which is not repeated at all, we have the emotional heart. It's an extraordinary, seemingly never-ending melody, totally unforgettable once you've heard it. It's one of the really magnificent moments in all music. This melody covers a wide range. It kind of arches upwards and then spends most of its length gradually falling back down into the bass region of the piano. Ravel connects this wonderful piece of romantic melody to the rest of the piece perfectly by using fragments derived from the gamelan texture of the A and B sections as the accompaniment for this new melody. And then, of course, we return to the B and A sections in reverse order, gradually resuming the feeling of greater emotional distance and detachment as the music kind of fades away to nothingness. It's a really simple design and stunningly well executed, and one of the most perfect and remarkable pieces, and one of the pieces that most clearly shows Ravel's deeply nostalgic, emotional nature, always hidden behind his perfect craftsmanship as it was. So if you're learning this piece, you're not going to have too many difficulties with just the notes themselves, but getting the right sound is actually very difficult. You have to be able to create a kind of feeling of distance at times, a kind of impersonality to the sounds that you make. And I strongly recommend, as a guide, looking up Percy Grainger's orchestration of this movement. He also incidentally did a wonderful orchestration of Debussy's Pagoda. He wonderfully captures the essence of the color scheme of this piece. That arrangement demonstrates perfectly the kind of variety of sound that you really need to achieve the layered effect, especially at the beginning. You have to use a highly varied touch. Very careful use of the una corda pedal can also help to get a unique tone quality for each layer of sound. And then after that, of course, you have to get the most connected, the most luxurious, legato, expressive sound possible for the wonderful long melody in the C section. And Grainger, of course, uses strings for that melody. It's absolutely wonderful. Also, I recommend paying close attention to Ravel's dynamic markings as well. His dynamic range in this piece ranges from pianissimo, or triple piano on the quiet side, to only mezzo forte on the loudest. So it can be very tempting to really let loose a big sound in a couple of moments where the range really expands a lot, but I think you shouldn't be tempted to do that. Always hold back a little bit on the top end of the spectrum and hold something in reserve. That's what really helps to communicate this feeling of distance and magic to the piece. So please enjoy the complete performance of this beautiful piece, and do consider supporting the channel if you can. An easy way to do that is to sign up to make a small pledge on www.patreon.com/independent pianist. But if you can't do that yet, please just comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more discussion and great music next week.
you.